And Jeff Shattuck, would you give us the invocation, please, sir?
I will. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and this meeting. We ask you to be with all of us here today and let our decision making be part of your will. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, roll call.
Trustee Booth is
Here.
Trustee Shattuck,
Here.
Vice Chairman Rogers,
Here.
Chairman Hammond.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum, barely, but we have a quorum. Okay, order of business, we have the consent items to review. You've had the minutes and emailed to you to review.
I make a motion that we approve the consent items A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Consent items are approved as presented. We'll let you get logged in.
Apologize for being late.
You're not that late.
You may have shown how to do that. You may not be used to it.
Yeah. Well, Trustee Brittingham's logging in. Number 2 was consider items removed from consent, and there were none. And item number 3 is information items, and that's the director's report. Lisa.
Hello. It's been a busy month. You have a printed report in your packet, but there are a couple other things I wanted to update you on. First off, you remember me talking about the TOP grant that we received from Department of Commerce, the city had received. We've started that process. You all were invited to a meeting this last week to kick it off. Basically, the Department of Commerce is paying for a consultant to come in, look at the property out at the airport, and identify what our gaps are as far as infrastructure, utilities or streets, things like that. We're working through the process, developing our project team and identifying what those gaps are. They will be looking at a second site, so I have asked them to look at the remaining property surrounding the airport, so more to come on that as it develops. If anyone wants to be more involved in that project, I would love some involvement, some help on that. Obviously, when we have our meetings, they're not open public meetings due to being on Zoom or whatever. So if we could designate 2 or 3 people to kind of go to those meetings, that would really help me out a lot. And we do need to keep in mind, council and all of that as well. So you've heard me talk about the Small Business Boot Camp. We've decided to move forward with that. We're going to kick that off in June. That's a partnership with Oklahoma Small Business Development Center, Choctaw Nation's Choctawpreneur Program, and REI. Still working to get some sponsorship money to cover that, to pay for the costs, but we are planning to move forward with or without the grant funding. So I forwarded out a legal opinion that Tom had given us for a sales tax related to small business. And I've been talking to several communities across the U.S. that have implemented grant programs for their small businesses. I would very much like to, work toward implementing something like that here in Durant through DIA to support our small businesses. As you saw in Tom's legal opinion about the legality of it, he did share that, retail, restaurants, those businesses that generate sales tax, they are helping generate funding for the economic development sales tax. And for that and many other reasons, it would be great if we could do something to assist them or support them in growing, especially because our city's growing so fast, and we have a lot of national chains that are moving in, and that's going to put the squeeze on our smaller businesses. So thoughts on that? I'd like to get some thoughts on that. I don't want to spend more time looking into this if it's not something that my trustees are interested in moving forward with. I've been talking to several other communities. Newport News, Virginia, for one, has implemented a micro enterprise grant program. They are $5,000 grants. There are requirements for small business plans, so on and so forth. I would like to very much look at implementing something similar to that, combined with some of the criteria that our local Choctawpreneur program requires. Choctawpreneur, I believe, requires 30 hours of training with the small business training to get their grant money. And I would like for us to focus on the low to moderate income area, which is it's the census tract that aligns with new market tax credits, opportunity zones. And that tract would include part of First Street over in, Main Street as well. And I can send you all a map to look at, and we can discuss it further if that's the direction that we want to go. I'll say that every proposal that I submit for an RFI for the big projects, for the industrial projects, when it comes down to incentives, they all ask about our application process. I'll tell you, Durant is the first community I've had experience with that doesn't really have an application process to get incentives from our economic development sales tax. So I would really like to implement some type of application process. In the past, it's been more, if you make a commitment and you come, we're going to offer you so much per job created, but we're not doing any type of process for them to apply to get those incentives. It's just kind of a given. Make the commitment to come here, sign a promissory note, create the jobs, and we give it to you. But we don't get any information on the front end as far as applying for it, telling us what their need is. So I'd like to implement some type of application process in the future, and I'd really like for us to start small, pilot a process for small businesses to apply for grant funding. So
I don't see any problem with having an application process unless y'all have any comments or concerns. I think we should have something that will kind of guide us instead of sometimes blue sky it.
yeah.
I'd agree with that. And then on the new grant, is that for new businesses or just existing small businesses, or what's your take?
So all of the discussions, all the research I've done so far has been about existing business. And so the one in Newport News, for example, that one is 5 employees or less. I've come across others that are 20 employees or less. None of them that I've come across support franchises. They're all locally owned, the LLC or the mom and pop sole proprietor businesses like that. That's kind of what I'm proposing, but I'm not the one with the vote.
I like the idea of that for existing businesses to help them. I also like the idea that if we could do kind of what like Choctaw's doing and have them do some sort of training.
And I'm glad you
help
bring that
them.
up, because the small business boot camp that we've been developing with the Small Business Development Center, who will be providing all of the training, all of the curriculum for the boot camp. After meeting with Choctaw Nation about the Choctawpreneur program, that's when we decided to base the boot camp on 30 hours. And it would be a requirement. I would hope that it would be a requirement in the application process that we require them to attend that, graduate from the boot camp process, just so that we know that they have, developed a business plan. Part of that boot camp will require them to work with the technical assistance providers from Small Business Development, REI, Choctaw Nation, to develop a project plan. That's kind of their capstone, if you will, for their boot camp to graduate, is that they will develop a project plan and, identify is there other funding out there that they're able to get access to. But then they would make their proposal with their project and apply for this grant money that potentially we would offer. So I would like that to be the requirement, is that they graduate from boot camp, and boot camp requires them to write their business plan. So
I think you're on the mark. I think we just need to let Lisa come up with an application process and gather whatever information you think's deemed appropriate. Sounds like you've already been doing a lot of homework on that.
little bit.
Yeah, and
still a little
whatever
bit
else the members want to share with her, maybe help give her some input, direction, and everything. But I think that's a good idea.
So the grant you're talking about in the boot camp, that's for new businesses?
No, the boot camp is for existing
Would it be for
businesses.
existing? Would it be for
Exist-
both or just existing only?
The boot camp that we have been working to develop, we're running 2 tracks. So the first one would be 0 to 3 years would be the regular track that would take 2 to 3 months. We're still working out the timeline. If you are a business that had been here 3 years or more, you can fast track through it and meet with your technical assistance provider to skip through specific modules. I believe at this time we have 8 or 9 different modules for it. But so if they had a comprehensive business plan already written, for example, they could skip that module of the boot camp. But they would have to work with the technical assistance provider one-on-one to make sure that their business plan met the requirements.
I think it's a good idea, just as long as we get the right guidelines in place. And you said, so we're gonna gear it more towards the low and moderate, you said it?
That's what I've
What-
found pretty well across the board. If you look up new market tax credit, low to median income area, opportunity zone, they all fall within that same census tract. That's typically what the programs are following. For us, that kind of hits the mark for us. That's where we need the assistance for our small businesses up and down Main Street. I believe Evergreen is part of that. Some up First Street. I'm trying to remember. I think it may go over down 9th Street, I believe. But I'll present all that to y'all. I just want to make sure that we're hitting the areas that it would help the most. And I think that our Main Street kind of gets left out a lot, our businesses on Main Street. So if y'all are good with it, I'll keep down this track and maybe propose an application process to you. But I'll keep you in the loop kind of through the process. If anybody has any experience in this or has anything they want to see out of it, please let me know, because I'd like to work together to develop this, and that way when you all are ready to vote on it, you're informed and you're ready to vote. So
I'd just say keep us in the loop, like you said. As
Okay.
things develop, send it out for any comments,
yeah.
any response or anything like that.
And one more thing I want to touch on with that is so I want to pilot this the first time if we do it, obviously, because we're going to learn things as we go, what works for our community, what was a bad idea or whatever. So I'd really like to look at it as a pilot. Budgets for this from the organizations I've spoke with range between the lowest was $106,000 for the year. The highest I came across was $250,000 per year. I want us to stay in budget, like budget an amount each year if we do this, and open up applications, I guess a couple times a year, maybe split the budget in half to give everyone equal opportunity on it, and take applications until the money's committed. That's how grant programs work. And once the money's gone, you can apply next time. So, and I'll bring that up because we're getting ready to vote on the budget for next year. I know this is quick notice, but if that's something we want to budget for, we need to either make that change today, or we'll have to come back later and amend the budget, which is no big deal. It's just an agenda item, but it would have to be amended by you all and the city council as well. So that's it.
I want to back up the Teams meeting that we had last week. The information that they were providing, was that proprietary, or would they be able to share those slides?
Remind me which
Well, that's the one, the new growth, not new growth,
insight.
insight, yes, thank you.
So I do have those slides, and I will forward those out to you all to look at.
I'd recommend that y'all take a look at all that information. There's some good information in there just to help us become better members of the authority. And it did last an hour and a half.
It squeezed into the hour. and a half.
Squeezed
Yeah, it was
into an
really
hour
good
and a half.
information about how a project works and what a company looks at on your sites, and it was good information.
I learned some things, so I think y'all will too.
That's all I have on that.
Any other questions for Lisa and her director's report? Comments on anything? If there is none, we'll go to item number 4, it's administration. 4A will be discussion, consideration, and possible action on extending the contract with New Growth Group until October 31st, 2022. Lisa.
So New Growth Group is the company that we hired last year through an RFQ to write grants for us for community projects. We signed a contract with them for 1 year, which will end the end of April. And they could write up to 4 grants on this contract. They, there were some feasibility studies in there, and some grant administration in there. So at this point, we've only asked them to write 2 grants. Not at their fault, really at our fault. There just takes some lead time to identify which projects are appropriate, do the research, see if there are grants that fit. There are some grants coming up later this summer, potentially, that we would apply for. I spoke with Chris Spence, who's the lead at New Growth Group, and we both agreed that probably 6 months would be the most we would want to extend that contract, and then kind of determine whether we want to, sign a new contract for a new period of time. But again, it's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's just it takes time to research and see what projects you have that make, and if there's grant money that aligns with it, so.
Okay, open it up for comments or questions for Lisa.
It may have been in the packet. If I overlooked it, I apologize. Do we have what the 2 grants we applied for and received, what that financial impact was
So-
versus our fee?
We haven't heard yet. One
Okay.
that they applied for us was the USDA Rural Business Development Grant for the boot camp. We won't hear about that until the end of the summer. And then they wrote a $2.5 million grant to the EDA, which we will not hear on until later this year. And that was for the Aerospace Technology Center out at the airport. And that's a that's a collaboration with Southeastern.
We originally paid 47.5, is that correct?
We have not paid them, so
We
we
have
still
not.
have a little over $32,000 left on their contract that they've not received, because they
Okay.
only get paid when they do the work.
Okay.
And so, all of that grant administration stuff doesn't come in until the grant is funded, and if we choose to let them administer the grant, that's where that part of the contract payment would
Okay.
come in. The grants, I believe, were maybe 6,000 each. I'm trying to remember what that said.
So extending the contract doesn't cost anything.
No,
It's
it
just an
just,
extension.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Me too. Huh. Well, I think we all like that.
Okay, any other questions on 4A? I guess we'll vote on, there's 3 items in administration. We'll vote for them separately. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we need a motion if we do.
Make a motion to extend the contract with New Growth Group, item 4A.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, motion 4A passes unanimously. Item 4B, Lisa.
I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Robert Holliday to explain. OG&E has requested an easement across an existing easement they have with us on our property located on Country Club in South McLean, next to UPS. So,
Okay, and I'll read the item. 4B is discussion, consideration, and possible action on the easement request submitted by Oklahoma Gas and Electric for property located at Country Club and South McLean in Durant.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to say, first of all, it's a great partnership that we have with you guys, and really do enjoy having that, because I work a lot of different areas from Ada to this direction now, and so it's really appreciated, and thank you guys for that. And I do have really good news too. Being that Durant is so busy and we have so much going on here, we'd actually have hired a project leader just for the Durant, well, it'd be from Medill and Durant areas, or Bryan County, I guess you might would say. And so that's how busy things is over this direction. And that's a good thing, because people notice that when you got that much thing going on in your area, and we do have. So you guys got a lot of work to do, and I'm sure to come. So what we're asking for as far as OG&E is from the, oh goodness gracious, that would be the mailing company there. What's the name of that?
UPS.
UPS, thank you. From UPS on around on around to the where the crossroad is there, that is all single phase. And when it goes back to the south, that's all single phase. And what we're wanting to do is do an upgrade, and it's at no cost to you guys. And what this upgrade will be is 3-phase. We'll have it all the way down the road, and we'll have it going on McLean going south. And so in the future, that will open up any new businesses that comes in there. It won't have to wait now. And material at this time is hard to get. Transformers are hard to get. Product is just hard to get. And so while we've got it, we want to go ahead and get her done. So we'll have it finished. But the easement side of it, what that is, we already come down that road. We already have an easement. But the difference is we're going to take out a couple poles that was inside the fence line, and we're going to move them to the roadside on the fence. And we're upgrading the posts, so there'll be better posts. And then the cross arms are, instead of being 8 foot, they're going to be 10 feet. So by doing that, we've gone from an easement that is, it would be about a 16-foot easement, which would be 8 foot on both sides, to a 24-foot. Now it's going to be 12 foot on one side, 12 foot on the other. And so I guess you might as well say we're asking for about 4 more feet of easement into the property side. And that is to protect our equipment, if things happen, trees, stuff like that, where we can take care of that kind of stuff. And the purpose of that is not only to upgrade it for OG&E and for any future business, but we're going to go across the road and serve another customer on to the south. And so that's why we're asking for this easement.
So
And
no cost to the DIA
no
or
cost
or
to
the
the
city.
IA. No,
Anything that you're going to just upgrade
you're right.
and take 4 feet on each side for a total of 8 feet. We're at 16, and it's going to 24, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so 4 feet on both sides.
Right.
And if businesses go in there, they need driveways or parking. They can be under, you just can't build anything under those easements.
That's correct.
No improvements topside.
Correct. Yeah. And that's it right there. And that just gives us room to protect our equipment. And, of course, having the franchise, gives us right to serve the streets and the alleyways of anything that's in city limits. So, but it's a good thing to have an easement, because used to we do things on a handshake, and that will come back to bite you.
I think going from, you said 1 phase to a 3 phase and
Correct.
planning for future growth and helping any potential businesses come in is always, instead of being reactive, it's always better to be proactive.
Yes, in our case, definitely right, because right now, with a new business coming in, we could be 6 months out to do what we're talking about right now. And we're just that busy. And getting product is also an issue.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
I'm not familiar with the frontage where we're at. I assume we have no improvements, no fence, nothing that we have to take down.
No, you do have a fence going through there, but we had 2 poles that were on the west side of that fence. We moved those over to the east side, which actually gets us along the ditch line, both of them were in the easement area. But if we had something that happens, it's easier to work them on that side than it is on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, again, it kind of cleans it up, makes it look a lot better. And it's going down McLean. It kind of dead ends right there at the bypass. I don't know if you've been through there or not. Then it catches back up on the other side, going south.
Quick legal question.
Sure.
Has the city attorney had an opportunity or a need to look over this?
As I understand it, she has already gave that to him, but I don't know. Yeah.
We do these easements, it's within the existing easement, it's 2 feet wider, is that what you said?
Well, it'd be 4.
4 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the same easement that we had. It's just actually giving us a little more
A little
square
bigger.
footage.
You think there needs to be something? Okay. I just
Curious
no, that's
more than
that's a
anything.
good question. Excellent question.
Yeah.
Make sure. So what we'd be doing if it's approved, give them the authority to go ahead and proceed with all the necessary paperwork and everything else that goes along with it.
Right. It just
Yeah.
cleans it up.
Any other questions for Robert? Okay, the item again, just to restate, is discussion, consideration, and possible action on easement request submitted by Oklahoma Gas and Electric for property located at Country Club in South McLean.
I
Thank you,
make a
guys.
motion that we approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
With that, do we want the approval to include anything with the attorney review, or are we just present it as,
I don't think it's necessary.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you think so, I don't think so, because,
If there's no improvements on the property and we're not,
no,
Have
that property runs on the east side of UPS, correct? And we own that property, and that property is not the greatest. It's got a creek that runs
Yes, it
from
does.
the northeast to the southwest, and it's gonna be hard to, and I'm probably speaking out of turn, but this is my personal opinion, it's gonna be hard to move that property. If a business is gonna come in, you're gonna have to do
a lot of work.
a lot of work. So we're helping our utility company serve our existing businesses and future businesses that come in there.
And if you ever got somebody wanting to move a lot of dirt, it's a good place to put it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is 4C, and that is discussion, consideration, and possible action on adopting the 2022-2023 annual budget. And Lisa, you have the floor again.
Well, you all received documents. We have two separate pieces of the budget. We have, of course, the 020, which is the operating expenses for each year, and then you have the 110 fund. The 110 is the sales tax fund. Ann Chin prepares that every year, our city treasurer, so I'll entertain any questions first off on the budget, 'cause I'm assuming there's gonna be several, but I tried to be as, transparent and put everything in there that I could think of, that we've spent in the past, so.
Any questions for Lisa on our upcoming fiscal year budget?
I also put a comparison sheet in there if you wanna look at that, what we've spent over the last few years.
Does anybody do we have copies in case somebody need to look at them again? If not, we had it in our email.
On the comparison sheet, which would be, I think, page 53,
Mhm.
is that FY 22-23, is that your budget?
That's the proposed,
Okay.
yes. And that will align with the document that is has all the justification on it.
Okay.
so.
But it does not include the small business grant.
No,
we
that
just
would,
talked
what
about.
I'm proposing on that would come out of sales tax, yes.
Okay.
And that would be this really tiny typing on this page. It's the encode printout that Ann Chin provided. That's not been budgeted in there. Again, if you all wanted to budget that as part of this today, you'd need to make that clarification in the proposed, or in the, motion, sorry.
And this is probably a mute question, but what was the 55,000 for consulting last year we went from 55 to 5.
Consulting would have included that $47,500 new growth group contract.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to clear that in my head.
And it's my understanding that that money we would roll over to the next year, what they don't spend out of that. That's what we did with the Marketing Alliance funding from the previous year. We rolled it into 21-22.
What would the 10,000 for legal fees, what are you expecting there?
Pickling plant. I'm just trying to get out ahead of it. We may not use it. We may use it. We may need more than that. I'm not sure. So I just want to at least put something there so that if it comes to it, we can start and we'll amend budget if we need to later.
I think there's probably going to be some, and that's going to be one of those unknowns that you can budget for it, and it may we'll just deal with that as time comes.
Yeah.
And the carryover from the consulting, you say we carry that over, but we don't show that in our 22-23 budget?
We did not so carrying over the Marketing Alliance contract from 2020, 2021 into 21, 22, we didn't show it in the budget. It's already encumbered and they just rolled it over.
So how many things historically are still out there rolling?
Rolling to next year, this time, the only thing I expect to roll would be the new growth group
Okay.
contract. I typically try to get things done pretty quick, but grants don't work like that. You know, you have to wait for the right one that fits to come along and then apply for it. Like I said, we have several that'll come out in, I don't know, August, September that we're expecting, and we may apply for those, so.
You just expecting an upgrade in computers?
I'm sorry?
On your computer, S&A,
Okay, so that's software, hardware, things like that. So the software would be those two. One of those is $2,900. It is the business retention expansion software that we bought into a couple years ago. The other part of that is the GIS web tech for the DIA website. I don't know if y'all ever had a chance to look, but it's very state of the art. It's what we add all of our sites onto, all of our properties. I'd like to, now that I have Tammy helping me with that, she can tell you all the ins and outs of that part of the site. But we're hoping to be able to launch that and offer it to additional commercial or industrial property owners in the community. I've verbally told several of them. We've had one, so Steve Reeves' company with the old Alorica building on, is that Radio Road? I'm trying to remember.
Radio Road, yes.
So that property is listed on our site right now, and that helps us become more attractive or get more hits globally on our site for looking to put a company here. So, and that's not cheap, but they're really good to work with. They provide all the training, any updating, any changes. It's all included in one price. So, and I believe that also. Trying to remember, I think we have a website hosting fee each year, and I think that's $500. So,
Any other numbers that just jump out at you, or you have questions, or just clarification on?
I want to know more about the audit fees. Is that already set based off of that number? Do we know what that is? And do we know, like, did they already tell us it's going to be exactly that number?
so when I am requesting budget or putting numbers into encode for the budget, there are certain items that are locked, and audit is one of those, IT is one of those, phone is one of those, and they are set by those departments. So audit fees are set by our city treasurer and Chin, and I'm not sure what the calculation is on it. It's done across all budgets. I can tell you that we have a whole lot of auditing that goes on with the sales tax portion, and so that's what we're paying there. We can't pay those fees, audit fees, out of the sales tax itself. It specifically says that in the sales tax ordinance. So DIA historically has paid that out of 020, and that's, I mean, rightfully so. So.
That's a good question. And what comes to my mind, is it a prorated amount, or is it just a fixed amount over the overall budget? Or Steve, do you know?
Well,
Can
I
you-
had asked
I'd
Aunt
love
Chen to
to
be
give you
here.
some
I'm
insight, but
guessing she got tied up.
I think it's prorated.
It's more prorated because IT fees are the same way, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I was gonna ask about that one too. That one's gone up almost
So like the
$2,000.
Tourism Authority has the same. They pay a certain percentage as well, or I assume it's a percentage of the same things, IT and audit.
As far as how it's calculated, I have no
I
idea.
don't either.
I just know it's across the board with all city departments,
Mm.
as far as IT goes.
Would it be out of place to ask our director to ask them to give us a calculation? Would that be
Ask who?
Aunt Chen, or however those numbers are calculated, if it's prorated, or if it's just a,
Yeah.
and lack of a better term, a blue sky number?
Yeah, we've discussed it when we were across the street several different
Yes, we
times.
have.
but I can't remember how they did that.
So with the audit piece, I believe it is prorated. Ann Chen was supposed to be here to help us out with this, but I'm assuming she got tied up. I did receive something earlier today from IT, but it didn't really show any calculations. It just showed, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just numbers for salaries and laptops, and I mean, just had all these column headings with numbers under it, but there were no calculations attached, so I still don't know how. I even clicked on the columns or the cells within the Excel sheet, and there are no calculations. They're just numbers that were typed in, so I mean, we use IT. There's no, and we need to take care of our money, and I think we should be questioning every penny that's spent. That's why I did a budget justification. I do one every year. I want y'all to know where the money's going to be spent, and you know, feel confident in the things that we're trying to spend money on, because we don't have any income. That being said, I want to remind us that the city pays all of mine and Tammy's salary and fringe, and we're appointed to do things for the DIA part of it due to the agreement. So I don't want to, you know, get down in the weeds on it, but I do want us to take care of our money. So
Well, I think it'd be a good question, and, you know, just ask how it's calculated. Not that we're questioning
Yeah.
nickels and dimes, but it'd be nice to know if it's a prorated amount or if it's a certain fixed figure that we can anticipate, because I noticed those numbers have changed over the years,
right.
and it'd be nice to know how it's calculated. And you just say that's coming from the authority, just
Okay.
asking.
Well, I will send an email requesting those calculations again, and as soon as I receive it, I will forward it out to the trustees. That work?
Y'all think that's reasonable?
Yeah.
Just to know how it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the budget that has been presented to the authority today? And now's the time. The only thing that I see is that legal expense. I think we're probably going to have to address that later in the year.
Hopefully
Possibly.
not,
Hopefully not, but
Hopefully not. We'll see what happens. Wow, I made myself all kinds of notes. I thought y'all were going to question me on things.
You can just read off what you thought we were.
Well, y'all should know me by now. I try to be transparent and make sure we get everything out of the way up front. I did write the budget justification with specific things we've been spending, with the intent that when we approve this, I don't have to come back and ask for every single little thing. We know we're gonna do these things, like, you know, I've had to come back and ask about Oshkosh, for example. We've done that 2 years. You know, Taste of Durant and the banquet, those things are kind of, they're $1,000, so they're within my, you know, scope. I can approve it or whatever. I want to explain other advertising opportunities. We randomly have things come across. So Durant Democrat does an economic development update every year. Don't believe we did an ad in that last year, but it might be something we want to look at this next year. Something else I wrote down, I've been approached by Livability Media, which does the, you know, top 10 cities for this type of development, or, you know, something like that. There may be opportunity there in the future, something like that. Would be over $1,000, and I would definitely come back and ask y'all about it first. But I want to make sure that we have a little bit in the budget that we can spend when those things are appropriate. Promotional items, we used to do a whole lot of promotional items. I've probably got about, I don't know, Tammy, 500 pens in my office that are dried out that don't work. But they are things that, you know, when I go to things with consultants or CEOs, it's nice to hand them a little something that says Durant on it. So be nice to have some of those things.
Lisa.
Hey, we got questions. So Ann Chen's here.
Awesome. Well, Lisa's going to yield the floor to Ann Chen, and we've got about 100 questions for you.
Budget.
Okay,
All right.
I try my best.
Couple of things I think we had some, on the budget, I've already got out of it, but Grace, you had a question about, and I think it relates to the audit fees. Is that a prorated amount, or is that a fixed amount, or how's that calculated?
It's a prorated amount, and then it just estimate the amount. And then we budget it, but doesn't mean that we will spend all. You can tell in the past that we just budget that amount, but over the year, if we did not spend that all, it go back to your fund. Yeah, we are not taking out. We just budget in this amount, and then if we spend more, then I have to, do the budget adjustment. But in the past, right now, so far, I don't think we spend all our budget amount for the prorate audit, and that including the corporate associate that they help us to prepare the annual report and the audit. And because we have a lot of grant, so almost every year, so far I know that every year we have to have the single audit report. So that's also including in it. And a lot of the grant money is from the CDBG grant. So some is related to the DRA, some is not, but overall we have to do the single audit report every year. So that is the 3 fee into that GL.
And that relates to just about anything on there. Now, when you say it's prorated, how is that prorated percentage
Well,
calculated?
because, okay, 020 and 110 actually is kind of that pair of the two funds. 110 is your revenue, sales tax revenue account, that quarter cents. And that one we cannot use on the operating. I mean, that fund is a kind of like restrict fund and a special fund. So you cannot use on the operating side. So that's why there's the 020 fund. That is kind of like all your operating expenses from there. And so we have to add these two funds together. And then what I did is I based on your budget. And then actually there's another one is tip fund. Tip also related, but I did not charge the tip fund. Actually I should, but I did not put it into your all I have to do is do your 2 fund. And the tip fund, I just put it aside. So that is the overall the budget for the last years, because we haven't finished 21, 22. So I used the prior years of the budget to prorate it. Well, actually, that is not, I did it the format, but that is the way we did that. And I have to say that most of the expense we really charge to the general fund and the DCUA fund. Yours is not the big portion, it's really small portion of that. Yeah.
Overall. Yeah, that plus the IT service, it kind of fluctuates back and forth, and it's gone up about $2,000, and that, I'm assuming that's a prorated or a prorated percentage. It's like it's under other expenses.
Yeah.
Would that be a question for Mr. Rucker?
Oh,
See,
Okay, real quick.
okay.
Ann, is it, the prorated portion is basically off of the total amount of dollars that you have? Is that a correct statement? For audit,
The total
for
of
audit.
the budget, and total of the budget, and then your portion, and then the prorate is that I estimate how much it will cost,
Yeah,
and then put it in, the percentage.
okay.
And you can see that, do you have this report from the Incode?
Yes.
Okay. The first line item is 2019-20, that actual. The first 2 line item is actual. Actually, you can see that 2021, you only spent 2,200. And the third one is our current budget, and so far you spent 4,282. Because each time when they do the work, they will send us the invoice. That's how we charge it. And when we create the purchase order, we already break it down. So this is your portion. And then this year I budget for the 8,000 11, you know,
$117.
$117. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend all of them. It just budgeted it, because all this number is estimated.
Yeah, no, we understand it's not gonna be spent. We're just
Mhm.
curious how those numbers came to be and how they were calculated. So, do what?
So,
Just, you said it was prorated.
uh-huh.
Okay. Did your question get answered?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, I guess, Mr. Rucker,
Thank you.
thank you, and Chen, appreciate you. I guess it's the same question. We were just looking at the budget and just trying to determine numbers that are changing and what all involved for the DIA, what's involved in that IT budget.
If you're looking for a simple answer, I do not have one. So my budget will increase a little bit this year. As my budget increases, we've got to charge all the departments more. A lot of that is, I try to break down to exact cost for departments. So one of the major expenses, if I remember correctly, was fiber out to the airport. That is split between DIA, Economic Development, the Airport Authority. I'm doing a 5-year rotation on computer hardware, so I'm charging about I think a fifth of the computer cost each year to, it may be less than that since it's split out between 2 budgets, but so every year is a fifth of that budget, so every 5 years I can have the total of a computer and buy it without charging every random 5 years, just jumping up and increasing. It's broke down. I charge a percentage of my fuel, percentage of my payroll, percentage of a little bit of everything. So it's not a simple answer, but
What budgets are?
exactly.
So it's a prorated over a 5-year
For
rolling.
the computers,
for the
'cause
rolling
that's
total.
5-year replacement. Some of the stuff like network equipment's the same way. Try to just grab a little bit from each department every year. So if I have a $50,000 in upgrades, I'm not hitting everybody at once. Just kind of adding that into the capital expenditure each year. Printer, toner, paper, workman's comp, so a little bit of everything is being charged back to just so my department can operate. Ends up payroll, I think, was 2,000 of that percentage, and then software, and then slowly gets broken down.
Any more questions for Mr.
Also
Rucker?
includes Kiera and the software y'all use, Encode, and upgrades to the council chambers for live streaming.
Do you use all of this?
Do I use all
I
of
mean, will the budget, she said they may or may not on audit.
Budgets are guess, right?
Yeah, so
Budgets are a guess. I normally hit it pretty close, but I can't promise you. I usually ask for more money from other departments, if you want me to be honest. I do a lot of budget amendments for more money.
Sure.
So usually y'all won't see that because y'all are set, not part of the general government or PWA.
Good question. Any other questions? All questions are good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Brenton, thank you, sir.
Clear as mud?
Clear as
Always.
mud. Lisa?
All right, other questions?
Any other questions for Lisa regarding the upcoming fiscal year budget for 2022 and 2023? Good. Naturally, if anything else comes up later on, you have a question you didn't think of, feel free to reach out to her because budgets are always moving targets. Sometimes they're accurate and sometimes we miss the mark. But that's why we have to set a budget to know what we're dealing with. And so item 4C is, to restate it again, is discussion, consideration, and possible action on adopting the 2022-2023 annual budget. And let's vote. All right, let me back up. We need a motion for item 4C that was just stated. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Item 5 is executive session. It was put on there in case somebody had some questions from our previous executive session, but I understand there are none unless somebody has something that we need to go into executive session for. Nothing? I'm sorry? It would have to be for real estate or incentives. Yes, real estate or incentives. I'm sorry. Clarify that. It'd have to be for the real estate or incentives. And it appears that we have none. So item 5A and 5B, there's no action taken. Item 6 is new business. Anybody have any new business they want to bring to the authority? Upon hearing no comments, we need an adjournment. Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Okay, motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank y'all for coming.